Though there's still quite a bit of work we'd like to do in the landscape, winter has a way of putting the brakes on. So we figured during this time, we could start on the renovation of a small building, which used to be a seasonal office for a plant nursery. The space is 600 square feet, so our idea is to turn it into a respectable tiny house. Plus, it gives us an opportunity to learn the ins and outs of renovation before we take on any bigger projects. Since the three of us scoped out the space a few weeks back, we began meeting with local contractors and artisans to see who may be able to assist us in the renovation. Our plan is to work side by side with them so that we can learn more of the ropes. Additionally, Sonder taught himself a 3D program so we can map out the entire home to better visualize the layout of the space and get accurate measurements for appliances and furniture.
Okay, welcome to the Meadow Farmhouse, which used to be an office where we accept Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Diners Club. This is the outside of the house, and we're gonna talk about some of the improvements that we're gonna make to this house office, starting with the outside. So on the outside, what we have is classic vinyl siding right here. Flimsy vinyl siding. So I took this board up to see what was underneath, and underneath we discovered green, which means that this is a building material called zip. And that, I was really happy to see that because that's a pretty good system. And this home was built 10 years ago, so it's pretty modern, and it was built really well.
What is zip used for?
Zip is basically OSB, which is just particles of wood glued together into a board that's 4x8. And then what they did is the green layer, this is like 1/2 inch thick, and the green layer is a WRB, it's called. It's like a water resistive barrier. So that way, if water hits it, it doesn't get soaked up in the OSB sheet. Because if you've ever seen water in OSB, it just turns to mush. It just turns to oatmeal. So this building product is nice because you could just throw a 4x8 sheet up, and then it has your water resistant barrier already. Some people use the Tyvek sheets, which is the white sheets that you sometimes see with like Lowe's on it or Tyvek. The thing what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take this old siding off, and we're gonna put board and batten on it.
It pays homage to a lot of the barns and farmhouses around here, which
Yes.
is board and batten.
I think it's just a very clever way too. It's like you just put wood on the outside of your house, and then wherever the gaps are, you just put a batten on it so that the water doesn't get in. I think it's just a very functional, good-looking way to design something. Now, before we do that, I looked into what we could do to make this house more energy efficient. And one way we could do that is by adding foam on the outside. So one potential issue with this house is that we get, if we warm the inside and it's cold outside like today, there's gonna be a huge temperature difference. And whenever there's a huge temperature difference, you have all kinds of issues that could occur. For example, condensation. The problem might be is that some of the hot air from inside starts to make its way through the wall, and at some point it finds a surface that's on the outside of the wall that's colder, and anytime when hot moist air hits a cold surface, the ability for that air to hold on to moisture becomes less because it's cold, and it starts to condense and water starts to form. So we might have the risk that once we start heating the space, which this space hasn't been heated because it was a seasonal office, there's also no heat in it, we might run the risk that we get water in our walls, and then our OSB is gonna turn to oatmeal mush. So we need to keep that outside layer warm, and one way to do that is by adding foam on the outside. It also provides a thermal break, so hot, warm air can, heat can make its way through wood better than it does through insulation. So if I take my heat camera here and I point on the wall, I can see where all the studs are, because those studs, they're way more conductive for heat than the insulation is. So what adding foam on the outside does too, it provides a thermal break. So now the heat can't go through the insulation. So that's what we're thinking of. We're not sure yet how much thickness we need on the outside, but we're thinking of adding foam, then adding a rain screen, which is a little gap between the siding and the foam. That way, if water does make it through to the other side of the siding, it can't jump over to the foam because there's an air gap in between it. So that allows it to dry out really well, and that's what we're doing on the outside. So once we were thinking of taking this off, we were like, well, we might as well take a look at the windows, because if there's anything not efficient about a house, it's the windows. Because that's where, like, you could have the best insulated wall you could ever create, but if right next to it there's a huge hole in the wall where all the hot air just gets out, what is the point?
Yeah, and
so
glass doesn't have a good R value.
Glass doesn't have a good R value. What we want to do here is upgrade our windows as well. So right now these are vinyl windows, and they're not the best. I mean, they're very flexible. They expand and contract with the cold. So what we're going with is something called fiberglass, which is a much stronger material, and I believe it still has the same R value because of the material, but it has a better ability to be airtight.
It doesn't expand and contract like
It doesn't
vinyl.
expand and contract as much. And airtightness is another thing that really makes you hold on to your heat that you're making inside your house a lot better, because now it can't escape through the little cracks. So that's what we're gonna do on the outside. Next to that, we're also going to take windows out, because if you come around the corner here, I mean, this house has windows all around it, which is not necessary. There's plenty of light.
I think we have 11 windows, right, on a 600 square foot building.
So our idea is, let's take these two windows out, because
This is the north side.
These are windows that, you know, a window can also be a great heat capturer, because, you know, heat from the sun will shine through the window and warm up the space. On the north side here, the sun is never going to be able to come in here for long enough to really make a significant difference here. So we're just going to make this a wall. And another thing I'm thinking here is to make a shed that comes off here and comes down here. And what that will do is it will hide this, which is our split unit, which we're also replacing to be able to do heat and cooling. That way we also prevent issues with snow forming close to the unit.
And it'll be extra insulation, right?
It will add another barrier for wind to try and penetrate their way through the building. So that's what we're doing on this side, is adding a shed that just adds more layers for the cold to stay away. Then up here, we want to do something nice where we put wood and get a really nice stain so that it looks nice and warm. And here, we're gonna upgrade some of this, probably make it a little thicker and put railings here. Right now, this feels a bit too open, so putting a railing there is gonna really help make it more focused on the front door here. The railing will have this X pattern in it, which will have the same diagonal as this little triangle on the roof. Because this building is a little weird. It has this weird triangle up there. So trying to blend that design into some of the other elements will help, like, bring it together a bit. Now then on this side, we're gonna take one more window out and make it wall. And we're gonna have a stove on the other side of that. So we're gonna replace it with
A wood stove.
a wood stove.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a lot of materials around it that are stone, which can hold on to heat well. So as the sun comes into the building, maybe some of that will be captured and that warmth will be stored in the stone. Because if I look at this slab of concrete, for example, at night, this slab is like a couple degrees warmer because it holds on to the heat. You can even see that on the heat camera. So then what we have here is on the side is we have this really weird shape. We have this roof here that just has this kink in it. And I want to fix that design. And the best way that I could come up with to fix that is to put a chimney here that will break up that small section of the roof that makes it look like the roof is kinked. So we're gonna add this like bump out here that might only be a feet that goes up above the building slightly and becomes like a chimney. And that's where the exhaust for the wood stove can go out of. And that will make this design of this side of the building much better as you come up the driveway here. You won't be looking at the weird shape. It needs to be different for it to look better.
Also, just to make mention of the board and batten, we're going to go with hemlock versus white pine, which are the two common woods that are used around here. And largely we're going to go with hemlock because we can paint it. It's more easily painted than white pine is, because white pine is very pitchy. So we went to the lumber yard the other day. We got a price quote on some of the hemlock, and we're going to paint it probably later today or tomorrow, just to see some of our
just
paint
to test
swatches.
it. We have a test sample. Yeah, so that's what we're doing on the outside. And the roof is in great shape, so we don't have to do anything with that, luckily. Gutters, we're probably replacing the gutters with copper gutters.
Woo, woo, that's
You're
gonna
such
look
a big fan of that.
so nice. I mean, it's gonna look nice, and copper gutters are a bit more expensive, but because this place is so small, it's not going to be that much of an expense.
It's only this, it'll be 60 feet of gutters that we'd need. So the idea with this house is that we're trying to keep as much as possible the same, so that we minimize the amount of stuff that we have to do to it. But we do want to make it up to a certain quality level that we're all happy with. So first, when you come in, this area over here is going to be a bedroom area. As we're taking these two windows out, this will just become a solid wall. And then this is my makeshift bed here that I created out of window trim.
Oh, I didn't even notice you did that.
Yeah, so this is kind of the width of a bed. So one thing I really like to do with renovation is I just like to take, offcuts and things and just try to create the space. So what you're doing there, where you're standing next to right there, is the dresser.
Ah, the armoire.
Yeah, the armoire. So you kind of get a sense of what it's like in the space. So if you come over here, you can notice that there's a bathroom here and there's a kitchen here. So this is not a lot of space for a kitchen. And it'd be weird to have a section of an island here and also islands here. This is kind of more like the sitting area. So the first thing that I thought about was, what if we take this door out? If we take this door out, we have doubled the amount of kitchen counter space that we could have. We could put a fridge in this corner. We could put a stove here in the middle as a nice centerpiece. And then we can have the sink right here where it already is, so the plumbing can just stay where it is. And then we can have cabinets all the way up there. Now then, we need to get into our bathroom because there's no bathroom door then anymore. So we can move it here.
Which is better user experience.
Which is a better user experience, because now when you want to get up at night to go to the bathroom or whatever, you don't have to go through the kitchen and get into the bathroom. You can just get up and go through here. What that also allows us to do is just like it creates a lot of space on this side for like a fridge and a countertop, it also creates space on this side of the wall for a potential washer and more storage here. So if you look at the floor here, there's these old little cards from the nursery, and I just gotta use them to make patterns and shapes on the floor to give an idea where things would be. So the idea is the door will be here on this side. So you'll come through here, and you're also already much closer to the toilet here than you are if you were to come all the way from over there. So instead of entering the room all the way on that side, you're entering the room more in the middle. This will go away. And there will be.
Decided we could actually, can we show that actually?
Yeah. There's utilities in here. So there's a pressure tank, and there's a water tank, water heater up here. So we could probably stack those here and make them take up less space. So if you can see this rectangle here,
yep.
This is where that will be. And then we can have a vanity on this side. So yeah, this will be a wall. And then the washer and dryer can go right here. And then a shelf can go right here. And then this is where the entrance for the shower will be. And the shower will have some kind of round curve here to also save space for when you want to walk through it here. So that's roughly the idea of the bathroom layout.
And the toilet will stay where the toilet is, which is going to be handy.
Yes, so we want to make sure that we keep most of the things in the same place so that we don't have to move and make it more difficult on ourselves. So on this side, we're going to have a little nook here.
A little banquette.
So you'd be able to sit here, kick off your boots when you came from the outside, and store them underneath. And then if you slide over here, you'll be sitting on a table. And then you can go slide around all the way over here, still sit at the table. But then here, you can sit and get up and get out. So there will be this table here. This is not a structural wall. So we're gonna cut a huge hole in here for like an opening to bring the kitchen and the living room a bit closer together, but still have a wall that separates them so you feel like you have your own space.
It makes you feel like you have your own space, especially if there's two people here, because then you could have somebody in the living room or bedroom and then another person in the kitchen. But it also still provides a wall because we're going to put a pantry right here.
Yeah, so there's been some suggestions of like, well, let's just take the whole wall out, which would really open up the space, but it would also limit our possibilities of adding furniture.
And storage.
So, you know, this is a very small space. It'd be nice to have some more places to store stuff. So, for example, in our limited kitchen layout, we're not gonna have space for like just normal plates and forks and knives and all that stuff. So we need to build additional cabinetry. So what we're gonna do on this side is put a closet space here that will do that. And then over here is where we imagine a couch to be. On this side, our wood stove will be in this corner with the pipe going outside up through that chimney that we're gonna make. And then there might be a chair here. So those will be a nice sitting nook here around the fire. And then on the wall over here, we're gonna replace that unit to be able to do heating and cooling.
Right now it only does cooling.
Right now it only does cooling.
Yeah, and we're also going to do a wood stove. Wood stoves are something like wood we have, it's plentiful here. And part of the reason we're thinking of having two different heat sources is largely just for security, because it's been the winter here, we've had maybe 4 or 5 outages, electrical outages already. So we're starting to think like energy is going to be a big thing that we're going to be thinking about probably sometime this year into next year. But we wanted to invest in a wood stove so that it gives us the opportunity to have different heating options, because God forbid if like the electricity goes down again, you could at least like heat a kettle and also heat yourself here. And we're getting the smallest unit, and a lot of these wood stoves are actually highly efficient, and you could get credit back because they are more energy efficient as well. So that was really good option for us. And the smallest unit will heat this whole house because it's rated for about 800 square feet, and this is only 600 square feet. One of the other things with the bedroom, so we'll have a bed here, and one of the things that I really like about my bed in my house is that I have storage underneath the bed. So we're actually working with a local furniture designer, which is so cool to be able to support like local artisans. So he'll be doing the bed frames. We'll have these little nightstands on either side of the bed. We might eventually do like a little console table, so when you walk in, you could actually set your keys down. It'll be a nice, great place for like some extra storage, and maybe some plants, if you will. Then we'll have an armoire, so that will be a place where you could hang all of your clothes and have some dresser space. And then as Sander said, having the couch, maybe it's going to be an L shape similar to the banquette in the kitchen, and you'll have your little heating space, maybe another reading chair. We got some really cool things that we're thinking of, and this project has been really exciting for us because at first when the 3 of us were here and we're just kind of like spitballing with ideas, that's where it starts, right? You come up with all these ideas. It's like a 3-headed dragon. We have 3 different kinds of ideas. Some of us agree on it, some of us don't. And then we could actually go back and like really think about what we want to do. So that's been really exciting, and we're starting to like get into like what are the colorways, what are we going to do with the wainscoting, what are the walls going to be like, all those sorts of details that come into play, changing up the lighting, all that other type of stuff. And then I will say, again, Sandra already mentioned this, but being creative with storage in such a small space, so even the banquette, that's going to be able to pull up so you could actually store, within the seats of the banquette, which will actually give more storage. You'd mentioned coming in, putting off your boots here, and you could actually store that. So we're actually also working with a local cabinet maker, which is pretty cool. So he'll be doing our cabinets. We have another guy working on our furniture. And one of the things that we decided for the walls, which we're actually going to see the artisan today, is we're going to clay plaster the majority of the walls here. And we walked into a space that had clay on the walls, and it really feels like you're just walking into like Mother Earth's womb. It's like so peaceful and tranquil. And we're gonna look at, the qualities of clay as well. Like one of the aspects of clay, that if you use it in the bathroom, for instance, is that when it heats up and you get the humidity from a hot shower, your mirrors won't actually fog up because the clay could take on that moisture and humidity and hold on to it and just dissipate it. So that's like a pretty cool feature. One of the other things we're going to work on in this area is that, yes, we'll have clay walls here, but we're going to do Tadillac for the shower area. And Tadillac is a lime plaster. So it's a bit more caustic. Lime is more caustic. Clay, you could just kind of play around with it and not wear gloves. But with Tadillac, you're going to have to wear some gloves. But it is like a clay plaster, but it's lime. And you have to do like 2 layers of base coat, 4 layers of the lime, then 2 layers of olive oil soap, and then a finishing product on that. And so it's a little time intensive, but then it actually is waterproof. And I think it's just going to look really beautiful. So I think we'll go up and we'll show you some of our design inspiration and what we're coming up with as far as the design of this space goes. But I do have to say it's a project that we're all really excited about. And it's like really one of the first projects that we're contributing to design-wise, all 3 ourselves, which is a lot of fun. So I have all these elements laid out on the table here because I wanted to show you a bit more of our design inspiration, color inspiration, textural inspiration that we're going to go with the meadow home down below. So at first, when we were first down there, we just kind of had these like big ideas and we started talking about colors and everything. And it really took us a while to settle on some of the colors, and we're still not necessarily ready to say, okay, this is going to be the color, but we did narrow down the color palette. And I'm showing you these colors here, for instance, but we had hundreds of these. But I think this is kind of something that we're really like. It's like a really classic color of like this blue-green, this kind of rich, velvety, creamy green, and then this kind of copperish tone, and then even this tan tone. And I shared with you that the walls are going to be clay. We're going to figure out what kind of color of clay that we want, but we definitely are going to trend a bit more towards kind of the whitish, lighter color of clay. This is actually not clay, this is a lime product, and this is more of what the Tadillac is going to look like, which, if you remember, that's what's going to go in the shower area. So can we get clay to kind of match that or meld into this? And then in the tiles, at least in the bathroom, we're looking at this ivory travertine, which, some of you might say, oh, travertine, that was like really popular like back in whatever the 70s and has been like kind of out of style now. We don't really care about what's in and what's out of style. We're just kind of going with what we think will look nice. And we love that this is kind of like the brushed travertine. You do have to finish this in a certain kind of way to make sure that it's like waterproof, especially if you're using it in the bathroom. But we just love that color palette and how it would transition really nicely to kind of the organic clay walls or the lime walls. And then we have to still like decide on floor, and we're gonna go see some more LVP products, which is like luxury vinyl floorboards and stuff like that. But then I think we're trending a bit more towards the engineered hardwood. I know it's easier to kind of mess up the hardwood, especially if you have like people who might be renting the space. But I think that we really like the quality of the wood, And you could get this usually in like click and lock or tongue and groove, so we have to, figure out which one we want. This may be a little bit too dark for the space. A lot of our furniture is going to be darker, so I think what we might go is with a slightly lighter and warmer tone of wood, and these are oak engineered hardwood. So I think that we also determined that we really like the look of oak floors. Then we, this is the cabinet colors painted, and obviously it's just in like basic paint colors. So we're going to go with like antique brass finishes. So we have all these, vintage antique brass pieces. We have some of these little white elements on the handles. We went to Significant Elements, which is a reuse center, and we ended up getting this beautiful doorknob. So this will probably be for the door leading from the bedroom to the bathroom. We also have this that we got from Significant Elements, which is, a brass door place where we could actually have that for the main door. And we have other elements that we could use and provide to our cabinet maker. So these are all nice, beautiful, like vintage pieces. And that's going to be more of the hardware that we're going to go with. So that's why I brought like some of these elements out. And we also found a lamp. This is like a floor lamp that we also found at I was going to say the reuse center. We did go to the reuse center, but we didn't really find anything that we could use. But this one we found at Significant Elements, which is also nice. And we also want to work with, just the accoutrements that we have. That's really beautiful. So like green glass. I think we've been using this as a reference a lot, this water pitcher, because it has that element of like blue and green, that kind of antique-y feel, and just a lot of, beautiful pictures and whatnot that we have. This piece. This is a polar milk cooler. So this is like kind of the old school thermos. You would put your milk in here and you'd soak this first in like really cold water, and you'd put cold water here, and then you could put this over your milk so it doesn't spoil. And you keep this with cold water. And this is just, again, the use of terracotta, for instance, clay. When this soaks up all the pores, and when this soaks up all the water, it fills all the pores, and then it gently cools the milk over time, which is cool. And I just started to collect like these little things like old books and stuff, just to kind of take on that inspiration of like that brass, that blue, that green, kind of coming with that tonality. And I found this like beautiful piece of vintage fabric. I really, I worked in textiles for a really long time, in sustainable textiles. And so I have a penchant for, really beautiful textiles. This might be a little too on the yellow side, but maybe not, because some of that gold and yellow and brassy colors come in with like the floor. This won't be like a main piece of textile in the house, but I could see if we get like a reused seat and you have to reupholster, maybe this is some of the fabric that we could reupholster, which will be really nice. So I just really loved the look of this. It's not a lot of fabric, as you could see, but it's obviously enough to do quite a few seats if we wanted to, which is really nice. And then we have these colors right here, and you can see they're a bit more of the muted tones. And these are some of the colors that we may think that we might use potentially for the outside of the board and batten, but we're still kind of like experimenting with it. So we went to the lumber yard the other day, and the gentleman there was so nice to allow us to take a hemlock board with us. And this is an example of a rough cut board, so you could actually see like this, whatever, probably the circular saw or something came in and sawed this. So what we're going to do is actually take some of these paint colors, and we'll decide, which one, because the paint will really react differently when you're painting a rough cut board. So we'll probably cut it into pieces, paint that, and then Typically you wouldn't want to, this is a green board, and what they mean by that is that it still has moisture, it hasn't aged, hasn't been kiln dried or anything along those lines. And you really wouldn't want to paint a green board because there's moisture in the board, and that paint or that stain is going to seal the pores, so when the moisture tries to move out, it's going to blister the paint, and that's not going to look good. So we really have to let these dry or get them kiln dried or anything. But for the purpose of this one, we just want to see what the paint actually looks like so that we could determine what paint or stain that we need. I think we'll probably go with an exterior stain versus a paint. The exterior stain will just like wear better. We did kind of think about what if we just not painted at all and just like let it like this, but I think we want something that's a little bit more finished for the meadow home. And then if we ever reclad the barn, we'll probably just have that as rough cut boards, hemlock boards, or pine, whatever's available, and then just allow that to be unpainted. So, but this is gonna be exciting because we'll get that much closer to figuring out like what the exterior color is going to be on the meadow home.
Yeah, so the process is really, you gather a lot of things that you really like and then see how well they work together. And you can even create little rooms, so you have some floor. You put a wall up against it like this. See how that looks?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just putting the hemlock away.
So you can create little rooms like this, right? And then what if the wainscoting was green? So you put a little square like that, and then you get a sense of what it's like. And then what if there's a piece of furniture and it has a brass like knob?
Yeah, or the furniture was this color.
Or the furniture was that color. So
yeah,
it's always hard to say like how things will look together, but using this you can build little sets and figure out what the color combination is going to be.
Yeah.
And then you can take it into the shadow, you can take it to
the
sunlight, and then you can figure out what's going to work best.
Yeah, and then this is, we were always constantly doing this, like what does a travertine floor tile look like with, you know, Tadilac or like this lime plaster on the wall.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really hard to imagine, it's hard to get clay to be white. You can get, you know, pigments to color it white, but if you're using like the natural clay from your ground, it will trend to be the color whatever that clay is. So if you have a redder clay, then you'll have a more rusty colored terracotta wall. If it's a browner clay, it's going to look brown, obviously. You could control it somewhat by the color of the sand that you use when you're actually mixing your clay plaster. But we did go and see a slightly, what it was like, I guess a tanner wall. And then we're like, that's a possibility. What if we go lighter on the wainscoting then? Like what if we do a nice creamy white on the wainscoting and we do have a slightly darker wall? So we're still in that kind of honeymoon phase of, you know, really figuring out like the best next steps and really enjoying the process of figuring out like what we're going to do. I think this is like a really, really fun project. But it could also be very overly stimulating where you're just like, let's just make a decision already as well. But it's been fun for us, and I think that we're really on the right path of getting to the place that we really want to be in order to move to the next step, which is actually going down there and renovating and putting a little bit of sweat and tears into the process as well. We'll be documenting the renovation and design process of the meadow home as we go, so you'll be able to see how it progresses in future videos. Until then, we'll be here hammering away at it. See you in the next video.